Okay, let's kick things off. Imagine this. An entire invisible ecosystem living inside you right now.
Trillions of tiny things, bacteria, fungi, viruses.
Yeah. And altogether, this microbiome, it weighs about the same as your brain, maybe 1-2 kilograms.
Which is kind of wild when you stop and think about it.
Totally wild. And this hidden world, it's pulling strings, influencing digestion, immunity, even, incredibly, our thoughts and moods. Like an unseen puppeteer.
It really is.
Yeah.
So today, that's what we're diving into. The fascinating universe of the human microbiome. And this is Dansplain.
We're going to unpack what the microbiome actually is, what it does, that whole gut-brain connection everyone talks about.
Plus some key research, the big breakthroughs, maybe some of the controversies too.
And definitely some surprising twists. Our goal here is basically to give you a shortcut, the key nuggets about this really revolutionary field without making your head spin.
Yeah, hitting the highlights, the stuff that makes you go, wow.
Exactly. So, if you like what you hear, please do hit like, subscribe. You know the drill.
And check out www.dansplain.xyz for more articles, episodes, maybe some partner products we like, all that good stuff.
Okay, so dive in. What is the microbiome, fundamentally?
Fundamentally, it's that community we mentioned, trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses, archaea, all living together in and on our bodies.
In and on. So not just the gut?
Nope. Skin, mouth, intestines, they're pretty much everywhere. But the gut microbiome gets the most attention.
Because it's the biggest.
Partly, yeah. We're talking potentially up to 100 trillion microbes just in the gut. And its influence seems, well, enormous.
Wow, 100 trillion. And I read something about it being called a second genome.
That's right, because collectively all these microbes carry like 100 times more genes than our own human genome.
100 times.
Yeah, so think of our genome as the blueprint for us, but the microbiome's genes are like this huge toolbox for interacting with the world, especially for breaking down food. And these genes, they interact with ours. It's complex.
So everyone's toolbox is a bit different.
Hugely different. It's really unique to each person, shaped by your genetics, definitely, but also your diet, where you live, your lifestyle.
And it changes. It's not fixed.
Not at all. It evolves throughout your life. It's a living, dynamic system.
Oh, okay. So this massive dynamic community.
Yeah.
What are they actually doing? They must be busy.
Oh, incredibly busy. Let's start with the basics. Digestion and getting nutrients.
Right. Helping break down food we can't handle ourselves, like fiber.
Exactly like fiber. Our bodies don't really have the enzymes for some complex carbs, but our gut microbes, they ferment them.
And that fermentation process creates stuff.
It creates really important stuff. Short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. You might have heard of butyrate, acetate, propionate.
Vaguely familiar. Butyrate sounds important.
It is. It's the main fuel for the cells lining your colon. But SCFAs also help regulate metabolism, even appetite signals. It's a core part of how the gut works with the body.
You mentioned specific microbes earlier, Akkermansia something.
Akkermansia mucinifera. Sounds like a mouthful, right?
It definitely.
But it's a fascinating one. Lives in the gut mucus layer. Its job seems to be strengthening that gut barrier, like tightening up the security.
Keeping bad stuff out.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Preventing things leaking into the bloodstream. And there's research linking it to protection against obesity, too.
Incredible. So they're digesting, protecting.
Yeah.
What about the immune system? I hear that connection is huge.
Absolutely massive. A huge chunk of our immune system is actually located around the gut, and the microbiome plays a key role in, well, training it.
Training it how?
Teaching it to tell friend from foe. To know which bacteria are okay, even helpful, and which ones are dangerous invaders.
Like sending it to microbial boot camp.
Something like that. Take Bacteroides fragilis, for example. It produces molecules that encourage regulatory T cells.
And those are the ones that calm things down, prevent overreactions.
Exactly. They dampen inflammation.
Yeah.
Super important for avoiding autoimmune issues where the body attacks itself.
So if that balance gets messed up, that's dysbiosis.
That's dysbiosis, an imbalance. And yeah, that's been linked to autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, IBD.
Right. And I read this wild thing about some bacteria being like spies, mimicking our protein.
Oh yeah, molecular mimicry. It's fascinating, a bit scary.
Yeah.
Some gut bacteria make proteins that look almost identical to our own human proteins.
Like camouflage.
Precisely.
Nice.
Helps them evade the immune system. But the downside is sometimes the immune system gets confused and attacks our own tissues that have similar looking proteins that might play a role in diseases like lupus.
Wow. Microbial espionage with potential friendly fire. Okay, digestion, immunity. What about metabolism and weight? That seems to be everywhere now.
It's a huge area of research, definitely. The microbiome influences how we store fat, how we process sugar, a lot.
And those mouse studies are pretty convincing, aren't they? Transferring microbes from obese mice makes lean mice gain weight.
They were really eye-opening studies, showed it wasn't just diet, but the microbes processing that diet. You give lean, germ-free mice the microbes from obese mice, and boom, they start gaining weight even on the same food.
So it really matters who's living in your gut.
It seems to, yeah. And in humans, while it's more complex, studies consistently link lower microbial diversity, fewer types of microbes, to a higher risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes.
Is there a skinny microbe?
Well, researchers are very interested in bacteria like Christianella minuta. It seems to be more common in lean individuals. So yeah, maybe a potential target for future weight therapies.
Interesting. So they help us train our immune system, affect our weight, and they also protect us from bad bugs.
Yes, another critical job. Think of it like turf warfare. The good guys, the beneficial microbes, take up space and resources.
So the pathogens can't get a foothold.
Exactly. They outcompete them. Plus, many beneficial microbes produce their own antimicrobial compounds, like little chemical weapons against invaders.
Like lactobacillus in the vaginal microbiome, maintaining that acidic environment.
Perfect example. Lactobacillus species create an acidic environment that makes it really tough for many potential pathogens to grow, helping prevent infections.
So they're like bouncers at the club. But I also heard sometimes the good guys can turn bad.
Well, bad might be strong, but yes, under certain conditions like stress or maybe antibiotic use, some normally beneficial bacteria can shift their behavior. They might even start cooperating with pathogens.
Seriously, like collaborators.
It seems possible. It just highlights how dynamic these ecosystems are. They're not static good guys and bad guys all the time. Context matters.
This is way more complicated than I thought. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The gut-brain axis. This sounds like the really cutting-edge stuff.
It absolutely is. It refers to the constant two-way communication between the gut and the brain. It's not just one influencing the other.
How does that communication work? Nerves?
Nerves are a big part of it, yeah, especially the vagus nerve. It's like a direct highway. But also hormones traveling through the bloodstream and immune signals. Microbes can influence all of these pathways.
And the neurotransmitter thing, I saw a stat that like 95% of serotonin is made in the gut. Is that right?
It's an incredible figure, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yes, specialized cells in the gut produce the vast majority of our serotonin, often prompted by signals from our gut microbes.
And serotonin affects mood, sleep.
Mood, sleep, appetite, yeah. And it's not just serotonin. Gut microbes are involved in producing or regulating other key neurotransmitters too, like dopamine and GABA, things crucial for focus, reward, anxiety levels.
So tiny organisms in my gut could be tweaking my mood or how I make decisions.
It's looking increasingly likely they play a role.
Yeah.
And it's not just the neurotransmitters directly. They also release other metabolites, other chemical byproducts.
Right.
They can get into the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and directly influence what's happening in the brain.
Which obviously connects to mental health, depression, anxiety.
Definitely. There are strong associations being found between imbalances, dysbiosis again, and conditions like depression, anxiety disorders, even autism spectrum disorders.
Those germ-free mice you mentioned before, the anxious ones?
Yeah, those studies were key. Mice raised without any gut microbes show more anxiety-like behaviors. But what's really striking is if you then give them certain bacteria, like Bifidobacterium longum,
The anxiety reduces.
in some cases, yes. It suggests a direct microbial influence on those behaviors.
Wow. And what about probiotics for humans? Any luck there for mood?
The results are, well, mixed, honestly. Some studies show modest benefits for depression or anxiety with certain probiotic strains, but others don't find much effect. It's likely very complex, depends on the person, the specific probiotic. We need more research.
Fair enough. It's probably not a magic bullet. What about cognition, memory, learning?
Another exciting frontier. Animal studies hint at a role. Mice with disrupted microbiomes sometimes show problems with spatial memory, for instance. And on the flip side, remember those SCFAs like butyrate we talked about?
Yeah, the fuel for colon cells.
Well, butyrate also seems to enhance neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and form new connections, which is fundamental for learning and memory.
So, theoretically, could my gut microbes impact how well I do on an exam?
It's It's a fun thought, right? We're not quite there in terms of proving it directly in humans for specific tasks, but the biological pathways suggest it's plausible. The potential link is definitely being investigated.
Okay. But the really surprising one for me was the link to social behavior.
That catches a lot of people off guard. But again, those germ-free mice studies, they tend to be less social, less interested in interacting with other mice.
Why would that be?
We're still figuring it out, but one potential link is oxytocin, the bonding hormone. There's evidence gut microbes can influence oxytocin levels.
The hormone linked to trust and connection.
That's the one. So if microbes affect oxytocin, maybe they affect social bonding.
And in humans, any hints?
Some preliminary correlation studies, they found links between microbial diversity in the gut and how sociable people report being.
So more diverse microbes, potentially more sociable.
It's just a correlation at this stage. You need to be careful. But it raises tantalizing questions, doesn't it? Could your microbiome influence your charisma, your dating success even?
My microbes as my wingman. Or wing bacteria. Mine. Blown.
It really shifts your perspective on what makes us us.
Absolutely. So much of this feels so new. What were the big turning points in figuring all this out?
Well, a huge one was the Human Microbiome Project, the HMP, launched back in 2007.
Right, I remember hearing about that. Big government project.
Yeah, a massive, like $215 million initiative. The goal was basically to sequence all the microbial genes in healthy humans to create a map, essentially.
Yeah.
It generated a ton of data and really jump-started the field.
And specific researchers, who are the key names? You mentioned Jeffrey Gordon before.
Definitely Jeffrey Gordon at Washington University,
Yeah.
often called the father of the microbiome. His work in the 2000s using those germ-free mice was revolutionary, showing microbes regulate fat storage, energy harvest. It laid so much groundwork.
Okay. And Rob Knight, American Gut Project.
Yep, Rob Knight's work, especially with the American Gut Project and using citizen science, has been huge for mapping microbial diversity on a massive scale with newer sequencing tech. His book, Follow Your Gut, also did a lot to bring this to the public eye.
And Elaine Chao, the autism link.
Crucial work. Her 2013 study at UCLA linking gut microbes to autism-like behaviors in mice and showing probiotics could potentially help. That really solidified the gut-brain axis connection in a very impactful way.
Right. And then fecal transplants. FMT. Sounds intense, but effective.
For one specific thing, incredibly effective. FDA approved it in, I think, 2013, specifically for recurrent C. diff infections, a really nasty gut infection.
It works well.
Amazingly well. Success rates often over 90%. It basically restores a healthy microbial balance. Now, research is exploring it for IBD, obesity, even depression.
But still experimental for those. And safety concerns.
Exactly. Long-term safety is still a question mark for these other uses.
And even COVID-19 got linked in.
Yeah, during the pandemic, research started suggesting gut dysbiosis might worsen COVID outcomes, possibly by fueling that inflammatory storm.
Wow.
And there's exploration now into using probiotics or prebiotics maybe as like vaccine boosters to improve the immune response. It's constantly evolving.
It really is, but it's not all straightforward, is it? There are controversies, debates.
Oh, for sure. Like any rapidly moving field, a big one is causation versus correlation.
Right. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other.
Precisely. We see lots of links, this microbial pattern with this disease, but proving the microbes caused it is much harder. There's concern about hype sometimes outpacing the solid proof.
Makes sense. What about probiotics and prebiotics? That market is huge.
Massive. We're talking like a $50 billion industry. But the clinical evidence is patchy.
Some work, some don't.
Some have good evidence for specific things, yeah, like lactobacillus GG for certain types of diarrhea. But for many others, the claims are ahead of the science. And prebiotics, the fiber that feeds good bacteria, generally good, but we lack standardized doses.
And you mentioned earlier, sometimes probiotics might even be disruptive.
Yeah, that's a fascinating twist. Some studies suggest that for certain people, taking certain probiotics might actually interfere with their unique, healthy microbiome balance. It's not always beneficial to just add more bugs.
Okay, and fecal transplants again. Beyond C. diff, you said it's risky.
It carries risks, yes. It's still experimental for things like IBD or obesity. There was actually a death reported in 2019 linked to an FMT procedure using improperly screened donor stool. It highlights the need for extreme caution.
Wow, okay. That's serious.
And then you get into ethical debates, like people trying DIY FMT, which is definitely not recommended.
Yeah, sounds like a bad idea. What about inequality? Could this create a divide?
That's a real concern. If these sophisticated microbiome therapies become reality, but are very expensive, Who gets access? Could it worsen existing health disparities? The potential for a microbiome divide is something people are starting to discuss.
Important point. And the hygiene hypothesis. Clean living making us sick.
It's a compelling idea, widely discussed. The theory that less exposure to microbes early in life means our immune systems don't get trained properly, leading to more allergies, more autoimmune disease.
Seems plausible with allergy rates rising.
Proponents point to that, yeah. Critics say it might be an oversimplification, other factors are involved. But the twist is, maybe our drive for hypersanitation is kind of starving our microbiomes of the diversity they need.
A tricky balance. Okay, beyond the controversies, let's hit some of those really mind-bending twists and future ideas again. Microbes and mate choice. Seriously.
Yeah, the animal studies are suggestive. Gut microbes influencing body odor or pheromones involved in attracting a mate.
So my gut bacteria could be putting out subtle signals influencing attraction.
It's speculative for humans, obviously, but the biological possibility is intriguing. Could the gut be playing Cupid? Who knows?
Wild. And ancient microbes giving us new cures.
That's a really cool area. Some bacteria we've co-evolved with for millennia, like Clostridium scindens, naturally produce complex molecules. And some of these molecules show promise against infections, even cancer. They could be a blueprint for next-gen drugs.
Like finding medicine cabinets inside ourselves. What about personality? Microbes influencing if I'm an introvert or extrovert?
Okay, this is very early days research, super preliminary. But some studies are starting to find tentative links between microbial profiles and personality traits like extroversion or neuroticism.
Tentative is the key word there.
Absolutely. Huge caveats.
Yeah.
But it opens a philosophical door, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much of us is really just our microbes?
Your thoughts and the space travel angle.
Right. NASA is genuinely studying this. Spaceflight changes astronauts' microbiomes. If we're going on long trips, like to Mars, keeping those microbiomes healthy might be critical for astronaut health and mission success.
Our microbes as essential space explorers. Love it. So pulling this all together, what does this mean for the future? Personalized medicine seems like a big one.
Huge potential there. Analyzing your unique microbiome to tailor your diet, recommend specific probiotics, maybe even predict which drugs will work best for you. Companies like Viome are already working in this space, though it's still early.
And mental health. Psychobiotic.
That's the term, yeah. Using microbial interventions, maybe targeted probiotics, prebiotics, even FMT down the line as potential new treatments for depression, anxiety, maybe others, could be a whole new arm of psychiatry.
And for everyone, public health. Just eating better for our bugs.
That's probably the most immediate application. Promoting diets rich in fiber and diverse plant foods to cultivate a healthy microbiome could have massive public health benefits, potentially reducing rates of chronic diseases, though changing dietary habits is always a challenge.
True. And finally, the ethical side again. As we get better at tinkering.
We absolutely need to think ahead. Questions about consent, especially for kids, privacy. Your microbiome data is incredibly sensitive health info, and just unintended consequences. What happens if we start manipulating these complex ecosystems in ways we don't fully understand?
Lots to consider. This has been really illuminating. It's staggering to think about this invisible world inside us having such immense power.
It really is. There are silent partners, co-pilots on this journey of life, shaping us in ways we're only just beginning to grasp.
So the big takeaway is that this field is exploding with potential, but also full of complexities, controversies, and these fascinating twists that keep things interesting.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And maybe the final thought for everyone listening is, how might this hidden ecosystem be influencing your life in ways you've never considered? What questions has this deep dive sparked for you?
Definitely something to chew on. Or perhaps something for your microbes to chew on.